Welcome back to the Morning Blend. In the mid-19th century, there were lots of homeless children on the streets of New York. It was after the Civil War and at a time when many poor immigrants were coming to America. Our next guest, Terri Karsten, says she's obsessed with historical fiction. She wrote this meticulously researched account of the orphan train. It is called When Luck Runs Out. Great to meet you, and thanks for joining us.
Nice to be here. Thank you.
So you love historical fiction. You've been reading it for a very long time, since you were a child, right?
You're right. The first novel I remember reading was historical fiction in second grade about the Lost Crusades.
Interesting. And what is it, because I know you love trains also, is there something about the orphan train in particular that caught your attention?
I think it was the fact that it was orphans, that they put children on trains and took them far away from anything they knew. And so the combination of the orphan and the train together just made me really excited about that kind of story.
And why were they transported to such great distances?
Well, the guy who started the orphan trains in 1854, Charles Loring Brace, he thought that the best way to raise a child out of poverty was to give them a good home, a good farm home. And so he took them to places starting in New York, the outlying areas, to have farm families adopt these children, because he really believed that country life would be the best way to help a child grow good and strong.
Fascinating, partly because I'm sure they have to do so much work to support the family. To support a farm takes a lot of work.
Sure.
And they talk about how much kids learn from being outside and also doing work and chores. Set the plot for us of this story.
So this is a story about a little girl who, in the early chapters, her mother dies. Her father died 6 years earlier in the draft riots of the Civil War. And that's another piece of history that not very many people understand. That was the worst riot in the United States history in 1863. So she's orphaned early in the book, and she ends up with her little brother living on the street. And the story is really her journey from a sort of broken family through the train travel to a home. And her acceptance of that home, because if you imagine a child who's used to taking care of herself, then adopted into a family, she's not going to be used to having people tell her what to do or any of the things that go along with being in a family. So the train travel is the setting, but the story is of the girl's own journey to finding herself.
I love how you make that point too, that the train travel, that's the experience, but it's about finding a family, finding a home, finding a place to fit in, a place to belong, all of those kinds of themes, which is great. Orphan trains have gotten some bad press over the years. Deservedly so, do you think?
In some cases, yes. Anytime we're in a foster care system, we end up having some problems. So there were some stories, some children ran away, ran back to New York, they couldn't handle the new situation. There were some families who took on children for their labor and not because they cared about the children, so there were some cases where there was abuse of the children. But there were many, many success stories, and I'm a real positive person, and I wanted to focus on some of the successes of that. So, and I read a bunch of letters that the Children's Aid Society, who ran the trains, kept in touch with the children that they had placed, thousands of children that they had placed, and they required the children to write letters back. And so I read a bunch of those letters that the children had written about their experience, and some of them were very positive.
Yeah, I was going to say, did some of them talk about being happy?
Yes, some of them did. One boy talked about how it was a miracle that his life had been saved. And he ended up as a governor of, I believe it was Michigan, it might have been Ohio, I can't remember for sure.
Fascinating.
But so there were some true successes.
True rise from poverty. Fascinating too, the Children's Aid Society operated from 1854 until 1929, which is 75 years is their history. Just lastly, I think it's important to just note that immigration's a hot topic today.
It is.
People coming to America from other countries is something, I mean, even the focus of a Time magazine cover, and newcomers coming from poor places. So I love that you tackled that as part of your story.
Yeah, it was very important. America's always had sort of a love-hate relationship with immigrants, and new people coming in, it's really who the new immigrants are that we worry about. So in 1869, the Irish were a huge problem, immigrant group. And so my main character is of Irish, her parents immigrated from Ireland.
I love that.
So
it's a great story. Thanks for being here with us today, sharing this story and this part of our history, which some people may not be familiar with. You can find a copy of the book by going to terrikarsten.com. It's also available on Amazon. Thanks again for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it. All right.